Howdy, folks. Happy Friday. Thank God it is Friday. We have Kevin Allen, as usual, on Fridays. We'll start off with our pre-show. Russ, we will not talk about the malls of Western New York, as I promised we would yesterday. Because, Kevin, we had a lengthy discussion about the malls in New Jersey, and it just had everybody.
Well, because I worked in one, and that's it all started from that. I mean,
yeah. What are the issues with the malls in New Jersey?
No, there was no issue. You know, we were going back to the O.J. Simpson thing. So I was working for a video game company, and I was only a few months into it. I just switched out of the hotel business, so I had TVs in my store, and I was never supposed to put television on. And you know, I did because people kept piling into the store wanting to know what was going on.
Yeah,
so
but
it got into that, and then we started talking about malls because then I became like a district manager, and I started.
Yeah,
so I was up in X area.
You know. Act took the conversation about O.J. Simpson and kidnapped it, and we talked about like every mall within like an hour's drive of X. So that's where it went.
Well, the interesting thing about malls is how they're dying. You know, like when I was a kid, like or even just a young person, like malls were the thing. You know,
they were.
And now, you know, it's just horrible. Like, you know, everybody shops online and. You know, teenagers don't go to the mall to hang out anymore, you know, so.
No, they used to go like to, you know, there used to be arcades that kids would go to 20 years ago. Now they play all the video games at home. But now, like the big mall in our area, Galleria Mall, it's near the Buffalo Airport. There are so many vacancies. Now, a lot of that was because of COVID, but unless they're going to knock down rents for these places, I don't think they're going to fill any. There's like large caverns of places that used to be like a big department stores like Lord and Taylor and J.C. Penney's and Sears. They're just not. I don't think they're ever going to find anybody to fill those places.
Yeah, I mean the big box stores, you know, they don't survive anymore unless it's online. You know, no one. You know, why even do it? Like if you're a brick and mortar and you're a big organization, you know, I don't know why you wouldn't immediately try to convert to all online and try to compete. Well, that seems like what Target is doing, according to my, you know, wife and daughters. That
Target does a lot of both, and they do well online. They do.
Yeah. So they compete with Amazon. So
Target, Walmart, they all do really good business. Go ahead, Russ, with the pre-show.
All right. So on this day in 1974. Smoking Joe Frazier, my favorite boxer, TKO'd Jerry Quarry for the second time at Madison Square Garden. And the reason I bring this up, and of course Kevin was around then too, is because I always felt, and I never got an answer to this, but I always felt like when we were playing Nintendo Punch-Out, that Glass Joe was Jerry Quarry. I always felt like because Jerry Quarry was known for having that glass jaw, that's who they modeled Glass Joe out of. And Kev, you weren't a big boxing fan, but you knew about Jerry Quarry. Sure.
I knew about Jerry Quarry. I always saw him as the Washington Generals of boxing.
Yeah,
like when a big name fighter needed a fight to make some money after he had just won, before he defended his title. I mean, he defended it against Quarry, but Quarry wasn't going to beat him. So you'd fight Jerry Quarry because everybody knew Jerry Quarry, so people would tune in, and so he was like the Washington Generals. He's the guy you beat up before you went and you know, fought for.
He was a safe tune-up, is what you're saying, which is right.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't realize. I think his first big fight was against Floyd Patterson. So Quarry went back further than I even realized. I guess Patterson fought a long time too.
What did you just say? I missed it because
it looked like Quarry's first fight may have been against Floyd Patterson. One of his early fights, but Patterson fought a long time too, so it probably wasn't that long before 74. But you know, he was older than I thought.
Well, Russ, because I remember that game very well, and you remember there was Glass Joe, and there was Bald Bull.
Bald Bull, yeah.
I think Bald Bull was a guy who you could hit in the head about 5,000 times, and it wouldn't matter. But he hit him in the stomach a bunch.
Body blows would get him. Yeah.
Yeah, he was. To my mind, he was Randall Tex Cobb without hair.
Now I can tell you because I was in the video game business at the time. I'm not going to talk about malls, but when Buster Douglas beat Mike Tyson that day, because remember, they were fighting, where were they fighting? Japan?
Yeah, Tokyo.
That day, Mike Tyson's Punch-Out came out and had him pictured on the box with the championship belt, and he had just lost the championship. That cost a lot of money to change that up, because that it essentially ruined the marketing plan of that game.
Well, speaking about costing a lot of money, I wanted to go in this direction because this just popped in my head. Cristiano Ronaldo, the soccer player, apparently at the dais at this Euro Cup had pushed away a bottle of Coca-Cola. And it was because it's Coca-Cola is one of the sponsors. He pushed away Coca-Cola, Diet Coke, Dasani, whatever, pushed it all away. And there was a market correction of $4 billion, and they're attributing that to Ronaldo spurning Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
Is that really true though? I mean,
that's
yeah. But I will say that stuff's big business. Like I remember during I think it was the lockout, when they had that NHL Players Association. I think it was like 3-on-3, or was it? Or maybe it was.
Was that Ryan Smith when he was doing that tour?
No, maybe it was. Maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe it was just a World Cup thing.
Okay.
But anyway, Wayne Gretzky was coming up for an interview, and he's walking up to the podium, and he stops. And I think he was a Coke sponsor, and it was the Pepsi was everywhere. And he just said, no, this is not going to do. So, he couldn't, and obviously he was being loyal to his sponsor. And that was, I remember that was sort of the first time I really had given that a lot of thought, because, not a lot of hockey players had a lot of big time deals.
No, that's true.
I'm sure his deal with, and to be honest with you, I don't remember whether he was Coke or Pepsi, but his deal with whomever it was, he was going to be loyal to it.
Yeah, but okay. But the only thing I could say in contrast to it, and maybe Mike's right, and that's how the financial world works. But like Tiger Woods years ago, not that long ago, maybe 5-10 years ago, was doing Buick, and you would never see Tiger Woods driving a Buick in public. That was an impossibility. So, wouldn't that hurt the market if you see Tiger Woods in his regular car?
Yeah. Well, the most famous one is the Dream Team, the basketball Dream Team, and Michael Jordan, who obviously, with Air Jordans, was sponsored by Nike, and the U.S. Olympic, their uniforms, I believe were Reebok. And when they did the gold medal ceremony, I'm pretty sure Jordan either covered up the Reebok emblem or put on something else over it, like a hoodie or something over it, that because he was staying loyal to and maybe contractually he couldn't do it. But I mean, it's always really skittish what happens. But all I know is $4 billion. I mean, just because the guy moved a bottle on a table, it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, who knows whether that's true? But I got a fun story that's hockey related.
Okay.
I was on a conference call this morning with the great Mike Emmerich, and I can't remember exactly how it came up, but he told the story because Mike was a minor league broadcaster before he got his NHL chops, of Mike Stothers and Val James fighting 12 times in a 7-game series.
Oof.
Now, and his only doc could say, you'd think they would have had it sorted out by the 7th time they fought.
Mike Stothers and Val James both played for the Maple Leafs at one point. That was during the 80s.
Everybody played for the Maple Leafs.
No, not everybody, but they did. I remember them both.
But that's got to be a record,
I would think so.
Yeah.
I know that they did a documentary that we saw numerous times over the the number of games I went to covering the Sabres a few years ago, when they celebrated the 50th anniversary of the Sabres, where Ty Domi and Rob Ray probably fought about 20 some odd times, but that wasn't in one 7-game series. That was over a span of years.
Right.
Yeah.
So, that's gotta be
well. Yeah, my favorite fighting story and it was in a book that I did with Darren McCarty, and he has vivid memories of this because the one guy, Darren McCarty, was not a heavyweight. He was a light heavyweight. He really shouldn't have been fighting the big guys, and the guy that scared him the most was Tony Twist.
Oh,
yeah. And he got into a fight with Tony Twist in St. Louis, and he got lucky and landed a hard punch, and Twist felt it. And when they were done fighting, Twist looked at him and said, basically, we're going to go again. So they were out there again, and Twist was pushing him, and McCarty just didn't want to do this. He didn't want to go toe-to-toe with him again. And all of a sudden, he heard Scotty Bowman standing up the bench yelling to Darren McCarty, "Darren, if you fight Tony Twist one more time, you're not going to play the rest of this season. You're not fighting him. You hear that?" Darren looked at Tony and said, "Sorry. Not much I can do now." And when he got back to the bench, he said, I turned to Scotty and I said, "Thanks, Scotty." And Scotty said, "You're welcome."
Yeah, Twist was a tough one, man. He was a heavyweight, a real heavyweight.
Yeah, he was on those Blues teams with Kelly Chase, and obviously Pronger was.
Yeah,
Pronger wasn't really a fighter.
No, he just elbowed you in the head. He
was just big and tough and dirty as hell, and that was good enough. But anyway, all right, let's get started with the show. Ack will be joining us in a few minutes. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Friday, June 18th, 2021.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
I'm Kevin Allen from Hockey Buzz.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Okay, let's start with the game last night. A 2-1 victory by the Tampa Bay Lightning over the New York Islanders at Nassau Coliseum. Kev, this game sort of played out the way I think the series is going to play out. Close, tough, but in the end, Tampa's talent is a little better than the Islanders, and that sort of played out with them getting the opening goal and then responding quickly after the Islanders had tied it up.
Well, for sure. And, we've talked about this before, but it just bears repeating. They've learned so much by their losses and then their championship. And one of the things they've learned is how to survive. They have survival skills, as my wife likes to say. They just hang in there and they know how to do that. I mean, they're 10-1 in games where they're leading into the third now. Yeah. And I thought Cooper, his post-game press conference, was just perfect because I don't know. I mean, a lot of coaches understand their teams, but Cooper really has an understanding. He said, I thought we were sitting back a little bit too much, but as it turned out, the guys knew what they were doing, and it was okay. But that's all they were doing. They were protecting their lead, and for all the offensive prowess and skill that they have, they knew how to do that. They know how to hang on to a lead. They know how to play. And Mike, you had said it the last time we were on about they can play anywhere you want to play, and they're perfectly comfortable playing New York Islanders 2-1 hockey.
Yeah.
And they think, not only think, they know they can win that way.
Yeah. Right. Early on, Kev, I saw that Jan Ruda was getting into it with somebody, maybe it was Clutterbuck. I don't remember who it was. And that person hit him 3 times with the stick. And he just looked at him because he's 6'3", carved out of stone, just looked at him like, really, are we going to do this again? And it sort of stopped. And then after that, what I saw Tampa do was keep the puck away from the Islanders with a lot of great passing, stretching the ice, and making their defensemen move. And you know what? That was working because the Islanders never could get a beat on them, and they were getting more scoring chances than the Islanders. For a while early in the game, they were in the Islanders' end a lot. And in the end, like you said, they know how to win. And this is where now all of a sudden the Trotz game plan falls apart a little bit, and he's got to go back to the drawing board because he is not going to be able to beat up this team and intimidate them or even win on getting more penalties and getting more penalties on the other team so they get on the power play. None of that's going to work, so they need another game plan now.
Well, I think they out-Trotz, but I also think that it was a little bit of a dangerous game that Tampa Bay was playing. Now, I think they tried to win the game 1-0 from about the beginning of the second period. They were content getting it out of the zone, retaining the puck, getting it deep, putting pressure on the Islanders, but there was a lot of play in the Tampa Bay zone, and I thought Vasilevsky was fantastic all night. But on the tying goal, Eric Cernak decides to try to shovel it to Vasilevsky when the puck is in close, and I think they'd had the puck in the zone for about a minute. And I'm like, as soon as I saw him do that, I'm like, he's gonna put it in the crease, and somebody like Clutterbuck or Martin is gonna muck it up and knock it in the net, and that's exactly what happened. And luckily, they got the power play a few minutes later, and Point scores that fantastic goal on the man advantage. If it wasn't for that, it would have been 1-1 going to the third period, Kev, and then the game is up for grabs. But once they led the game 2-1 going in the third, they just resumed playing that disciplined defensive style and relying on Vasilevsky, and they were able to win the game.
Well, it was interesting in the post game too, because Cooper sounded a little bit like Trotz when he said, "You know what we decided is if they were going to score against us, they were going to have to go 200 feet. Like we were, they were pushing the puck, as you said, get it in deep, and they were going to make them come up the entire ice in order to do that." And what was Trotz saying? Trotz was saying that we didn't get enough production out of our offense. All four lines, we were underproduced. He was just talking, and it is amazing to me, even like exceptional, knowledgeable coaches like Barry Trotz can't entertain the idea that it was the other team that was preventing his movement. Right. It's their failure. Like we just didn't get in.
Right. That is funny.
Yeah, we got to get more out of our lines. Well, the reason you weren't getting in is Tampa Bay is playing the way you do. And, when you prevent the other team from getting goals, you don't say, well, they didn't get the job done. You say, boy, our guys did a great job. So, but, both teams are just playing great. Like, this is good hockey. And it's a shame.
It was a little boring last night, but it still was good hockey.
Well,
I liked it. So.
Well, no, what I thought, Kev, the build up to that game in terms of, oh my God, they're going into the crucible of the Nassau Coliseum where teams go to die. I can't remember what I messaged Russ that Yes Network had some reference to Nassau Coliseum, and
which I never heard before in my entire life.
Right, the Islanders' record at Nassau. I mean, don't get me wrong.
The record, yes. What they wrote on top of it, I never.
Right. So, but Tampa, they shut the crowd up in the first period with the Gord goal. The crowd was, I thought, muted for most of the second period while, the Islanders were getting good chances. Then they exploded when they got the tying goal, which was a typical hardworking Islander goal. And then Tampa Bay shut them up with the goal to make it 2-1. And in the third period, there was just sort of like a murmur. And, they were trying to stay in it. But I think that Tampa Bay successfully neutralized as much as you can the Islanders crowd.
I agree. Yeah, it wasn't the factor I thought it was going to be. But these are just two hardworking teams that I think can push all those things aside and just play the game. So,
and I don't think this series is over with because Tampa Bay won game 2. I think it's very possible they get a split and they go back to Tampa Bay tied 2-2, and then it could be like I think I predicted it going in 7 and Tampa Bay winning.
I went 7-2. A couple other things, Mike. Like I had brought up yesterday, Kev. Like Cooper went to Hofstra. I know somebody that went to school with him, and so he was on the island for during his college years. So he certainly spent time in Nassau Coliseum. So none of that was going to bother him anyhow, because he had seen that many times before, and he's a champion too. So that always helps. But the other thing was, and I mentioned this a couple days ago, 2-3 days ago, was that Braden Point was eventually going to wake up, and now that Braden Point has woken up. It's like, Barza was the secret weapon for the Islanders. Point is definitely the secret weapon for Tampa, but Tampa has more than that. And when Barzal's not scoring for the Islanders, it does dry up quick. Even though Brock Nelson's a really good player, you can't count on him to score every game. It's just not the way he is, and he's not a big assist guy. Mm-hmm. So this is where Tampa either has to make more mistakes and play into the Islanders game, which is likely not to happen, or the Islanders are going to have to figure out how to get a little more offense out of their guys. And that is going to be on Barry Trotz. He's going to have to figure that out.
Yeah. Well, that's why they pay them the big bucks to do that. But I think it's easier for Trotz to figure out how to stop good offenses than to figure out how to create more goals. So,
Oh, I think so too. I mean, I think you're right. Yeah. And the other thing is, so in the chat room, they're asking, so when Sorokin getting in, they're not taking Varlamov out. He didn't lose in that game.
Right.
There's no reason to take him out.
Yeah, no. Hey.
For sure. I would agree with that. And
now, if Eck was on the show,
Eck would give us a different story, and he might when he gets on. I get it.
You gotta go to Sorokin. He
would have stopped that goal side to side. I'm telling you, he'd have stopped it.
All right. Well, okay. Let's talk about a few different things here. I was curious to read this from Pierre LeBrun yesterday, Kevin. I wanted to get your input on this. LeBrun reported that he's hearing from sources throughout the league, and this could be just simply putting it out there to sort of put a little pressure on Ron Francis, but that there is some sort of sticker shock right now at the exorbitant prices that Ron Francis is requiring to make these side deals like Vegas did. And so he's basically doing what George McPhee did a few years ago and asking for the moon, hoping that somebody actually pays him the moon. But, that we're a month away from the expansion draft, and that right now the hope is that the prices go down like it usually does a month before the trade deadline. I mean, do you think NHL teams are going to fall for this a second time? I do, because I do, because the cap situation right now in the league is so bad with the flat cap that somebody, maybe it's not going to be Alex Tuck or Jonathan Marchessault, but somebody's going to make a deal that they probably regret later on.
Well, I mean, there might be one of those or two of those, but they're not going to do everything they did last time. I mean, basically the way it was explained to me and talking to general managers is there's going to be a lot more working between teams than working with Seattle.
Right.
Because if you trade the asset that you're going to lose to another team, you're going to get assets in return, draft picks, which doesn't, that you don't have to protect them in the expansion draft or whatever, but you're going to get something for them. As opposed to cutting a deal with Seattle, where you have to give up, in many cases, the team that gave up the assets last time gave up more than they were trying to protect. Mm-hmm. Like Minnesota ended up giving up way more than that situation. Florida did. There were a number of teams that gave up more.
Columbus.
Yeah. So I don't think they're going to fall for that again. I don't think. I mean, there'll be some deals where they'll give up a second asset. But I think for the most part, like it looks like Eric Johnson's going to save the day in Colorado, so they won't lose, either Girard or Devin Taves. Right. But they were going to trade. They weren't going to lose that to Seattle, nor were they going to give them an asset not to take those guys, because it would have been a big asset. They can either trade that to another team and got a lot for Taves or Girard. So I don't see that. I don't think Seattle's going to end up with as much as Vegas did. I don't think they'll
end up with as much, Kev. I think you're right, but I could still see the Flyers doing something. And again, Fletcher was with Minnesota. I could see 2 or 3 teams still doing something because they are that desperate. I think Ron Francis is like that owner of the used car dealer, and he sees somebody getting dropped off with an Uber, and he's got a few teams and he knows it. And so, he's gonna talk to these teams because he knows they need to get out from under. And teams that want to really do something in the playoffs next year but are hamstrung with the cap are going to have to give him something. And there's going to be some of them, and I think the Flyers are one of them.
Well, I would say this. I think he is going to make some deals and get some assets for helping out, like the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Right.
Those deals are going to happen. For sure, because Seattle's got to get to the floor as well, so it helps them. So I think we will see those deals. The deals that I think that we won't see as many of is, okay, don't take Jones, and I'll give you Smith and Peterson and whoever, and there'll be 3 or 4 guys that he gives up and a draft pick. We won't see those. That's where we're at.
So Kev. Also, wrapping from yesterday, you were right about Brind'Amour. I was at that press conference, and what I did take out of it, though, is that it seemed like, and look, Don Waddell always plays it close to the vest with this stuff. He knows what to say. He's been a veteran in this a long time. But based on the fact that they jumped at trying to at least let teams know that Hamilton's looking around this early, led me to believe there was an early impasse on this price and that the agent for Hamilton's not going to budge for a while. And so he was afraid of the clock running out by July 28th. Now, Ron Francis could get Dougie Hamilton and say, listen, you come here, I will pay you $8 million for 7 years, and we can actually try and compete like Vegas did. And you know what? He and Francis get along. It could happen.
I think that's a possibility. Yeah, I don't think there's any question. I do think that Carolina is just hoping that the market is not out there. But, you may be right. If there's any team that's going to pay it and any team willing to, to be honest with you, it'd be easy for Seattle to pay it.
It would.
Because they got zero, players under.
They have no debt. They have no debt.
Right. Yeah.
And the thing is, a couple things with Seattle. I think that they're going to shy away from taking on big money contracts that have lots of term, like say Voracek, because he's got 3 years left, Russ?
Yeah, 3 years. Right.
I don't know about that. I think it's going to depend on the assets.
Yeah, he's going to have to give up.
Tyler Johnson, James Neal, maybe Zach Parise. I think these are all guys that he might consider under the right circumstances. And I think Steve Yzerman is standing up there with raising his hands. So remember me over here. I can help out as the third man in, except I'm going to want more than a 4th round pick.
Right. I think the Flyers will have to give up an actual player if they want to get them to pick Jake Voracek. They'll probably have to give up a player and a draft pick. But of some sort. That's what I think it would cost them.
Ideally, I think Francis will want to, he'll be open and willing to take on salary, but ideally it would be maybe a guy who has a year or at most 2 left on his deal instead of 3 or 4.
Well, but the thing about Voracek is, look, he could play hockey.
Sure.
He could score goals. He's just going to cost you some goals. And on a team that's really expecting to compete and stay in it, they can be very costly. He needs a change of scenery desperately. So you could put him on that team, and he's probably going to be your team's leading scorer for the next 3 years. But that's the reality. It's just to the Flyers, he has really worn out, what good he was for them.
But Kevin, I think you're dead on when it comes to, that teams do have options. Like I've been, and we're going to talk about this as we get closer to the expansion draft, like who teams may leave exposed and who Seattle might take from each individual team. But like I'm obviously focused on Toronto. A guy like Alex Kerfoot has been speculated that, he might be left unprotected, that Seattle would potentially pick up. But there's value to Alex Kerfoot. He had a good playoff. He's a speedy player. He can play wing. He can play center. There's value out there that you probably could get a draft pick or a player for an Alex Kerfoot. And probably the Leafs would rather trade him and get something back than just giving him up to Seattle for nothing.
Yeah, for sure. And there's teams looking for a third center. San Jose is looking for one. Colorado, if they trade Kadri, will be looking for one.
I know a team in the playoffs we're going to talk about that desperately needs a center.
Yeah, for sure. So, this is going to be just a fascinating summer because we have more players than usual in the trade market, for one. We have a lot of bad contracts that people want to move. I mean, really unprecedented number. I mean, when you look at, Johansson and Duchesne in Nashville, Zach Parise in Minnesota, James Neal in Edmonton, Tyler Johnson, Voracek, Skinner.
Jeff Skinner, yeah, exactly.
Skinner. So, just a ton of just contracts that are going to crush teams. So, there's going to be a lot going on here. And I think this is where the creativity of the general managers will come into question.
And the curious thing here, Kev, is that the offseason is not that long, and that's going to put pressure on these general managers to be able to make moves in a shorter window. And that opens up things for potential mistakes because desperation will sort of set in. Now, Elliot Friedman makes a weekly appearance on Buffalo Radio, and he was asked about Jack Eichel, and he confirmed what's been reported over the last couple of days, that the Anaheim Ducks are heavily interested in Eichel, and this makes a lot of sense because Getzlaf's contract has expired, so they've got a lot of cap space. Friedman reports that the 3rd overall pick is in play, and that they've asked the Sabres about Reinhart and Eichel, that they won't get both of them, but they're interested in both of them. And Russ, this goes along again when we talked about this yesterday, and I sort of shake my head that the Sabres hierarchy believes they have this draft, like they have it nailed. They know who the great players are. And I hear this and I'm like, what in the hell are they talking about?
Here's the best way I can put it, and I'll put it differently than I did it the other day. I've been working at, covering prospects for a lot of years, making draft lists. I know I'm not a scout, but I watch a lot of video and I do a lot of different things, and I speak to a lot of players. This is by far the hardest year that I've ever had. I wouldn't even attempt to do more than a list of 32, simply because not being able to see enough, not being able to see enough live, the whole mix, the good mix that you'd like to have. And there's no way the Sabres could ever feel that comfortable about this draft because they don't have enough boots on the ground. So what they're saying is they're trying to get their fans excited about this draft and saying, we got this. And this is a very dangerous draft to say we got this. Even if you went with all the U.S. guys, the U.S. team is not what it was a couple of years ago. There's good players there, don't get me wrong. But if you start picking them in the wrong spots, you're going to look 3-4 years down the line and say, I don't think we picked this guy in the right spot. I think that's the inherent danger here.
Yeah, and I think, that it's not a slam dunk that Anaheim can get this deal done. I think they're more than willing to give up that 3, but they're going to balk at Drysdale or Zegras. So,
absolutely.
And I don't know, like they wouldn't budge off of it with Dubois. So
yeah,
I don't know. I don't know if they're going to willing to do that. I think I'd see the Kings would give up Turcotte.
Yeah, I can see that.
That's a guess. But what do they pick? An 8th?
Yeah.
So 8th is not 3rd.
No. Well, and the other thing that has come about too, Kev, is that like we've had a benefit of now 2 years, and we could see that, hey, Zegras is probably the better player over Turcotte too, right? And the Kings, now that they have Byfield, no longer look at Turcotte as their future number 1 center. It's Byfield.
Right. But they won't trade Byfield just like Anaheim.
No. Well, I don't think Byfield will be there. I mean, I think it'll be Eichel if they get him. And,
well, if they were to get him, but I'm just saying otherwise.
But it changes everything. If you bring in Eichel, that's 5 years difference. Like, you're basically building around Eichel then.
But then LA has.
But he's going to age at some point too.
Right.
Well, but he is. But I'm just saying it's a different situation now.
Yeah.
But then
30. Byfield is going to be 24, 25. He's 32, 27. So, if Byfield thinks he's going to be moving anytime soon into the number 1 center role, it's probably not true.
But then we're also guessing Eichel's the same player after surgery.
But then LA has the same problem that a team like Toronto does. You say they trade for Eichel and they give up Byfield. Now they have a lot of good young players on entry-level contracts that we've talked about. But at the core of that team, you have an $11 million Doughty, a $10 million Kopitar, and a $10 million Eichel. That's $31 million on 3 players. And I think Toronto right now has proved you can't win.
I don't think it proves that at all.
Okay. I think it does, but that's why I've been an advocate for them trading Nylander. Yeah. I don't think they can win with 4 players making 40 and 3 players making 31 is about the same thing. But
never say never. If you have the deepest farm system, which LA does, and get those guys to produce, it's possible they could get around it. I
don't think they're going to want to give up Byfield, though. I mean, I
they won't.
See him giving Turcotte, but
yes,
so. Well, let me look at something here. What you guys?
Turcotte's an excellent player, but at the end of the day, the extra size on Byfield is what you don't want to give up.
Right.
Again, this league has a shortage of centers. and we're going to be talking about a team that maybe has the biggest shortage of centers.
Yeah, and no money to spend on them, Russ. But just while you're looking that up, Kev, just one final thing on Seattle. Friedman reported that Rick Tocchet has had a third interview with Ron Francis and the Kraken. Doesn't mean that it's etched in stone, but that's a good indicator that Tocchet is, maybe the leading candidate for the Kraken job. And Russ, I think he proved in Arizona that he could work with a team that I think was sort of lacking a lot in talent in some areas, and he was able to get them to play pretty well. So, I think
just call Steve Stamkos. He's the one who got Tocchet. When Tocchet went to Tampa, replacing Barry Melrose, who fell in love with this 40-year-old plus line and playing Steve Stamkos 9 minutes a game and no power play, Rick Tocchet rescued him. And that's the kind of stuff Tocchet can do. Listen, Tocchet had Arizona playing over their head. I think Arizona, no matter what coach they bring in, are going to find themselves wishing that they had, retained Rick Tocchet.
Yeah, so I was right on this, but I just wanted to look. So what you're saying is Tampa Bay with Kucherov, Stamkos, Braden Point, Vasilevsky, and Hedman at $45.6 million, 5 players at averaging $9 million, they won't be able to win. Is that what you're saying?
Well, they've proved that they can get through a round, and the 4 guys at $40 million have proved that they can't. At least they haven't yet.
Yeah, well, my only point is that you can't just throw a blanket out that you can't win. You're paying $10 million. That's it just depends on who they are and how it works. And I think you can do it. It's just a matter of whether you get the right guys or not.
Yeah, and 2 of those 3 guys who are making over $10 million if they do trade for Eichel, 2 of them have won 2 Stanley Cups. So you have to cut them some slack there as we welcome Ak into the show.
Hello, I'm very sorry, folks. I had a doctor's appointment with my son and ran late, and I'm here. Excellent.
We've already talked about the Islanders in Tampa.
Okay, good.
If you want to give your thoughts on that, and then we can move on to rumors.
But you're not allowed to say that they got to shift to Sorokin.
They don't have to shift to Sorokin.
Okay.
Wow. Okay.
Wow.
I think what you saw last night was that's Tampa. That's how it felt like when I was watching the game. That's a tough scene to go into. That building was crazy. All the pressure on, it really felt like something was going to go differently last night. And obviously 0-0 for a very long time. Could have gone either way, but that's Tampa. That's why Tampa's, probably, who knows? We keep saying who's the best team. I don't know who the best team is right now, but Tampa, that was a Tampa game. That was a Tampa game through and through. Just like game 1 was an Islander game through and through. So, yeah, I usually think game 3 for me is the biggest game of the series. So I think that
I think it's 4. Difference between 3-1 and 2-2.
Yeah.
Usually. It's game 4. That's the biggest game of the series.
I just love the momentum shift of series. To me, that's the most fun thing about a playoff series is how the pressure goes from team to team, and how who has to win more, who's under. Obviously, game 4 now is all on the Islanders. This is definitely one of those situations. They win that game. Game 5 goes all on Tampa. So it's not that it's just a fun shift. But I thought it was a good game. I'm really pulling for the Islanders. I don't think has there been any talk today? I haven't been able to hear. Is there any talk today about Sorokin possibly going in?
No.
I didn't think so. I wouldn't put him into that pressure right now either. I really wouldn't. I did want to ask Kevin one thing before we get to the other game, and that is I'm working on a story on this, and I believe obviously the executives of the year come out, Zito, Lamoriello, and Bergevin, but or Bergeron. Berger. I always mix up Bergevin and Bergeron. Sorry. I do believe that the guy I would have voted for. I'm a Zito fan, but the guy I would have voted for this wasn't one of those 3. I honestly feel like this year the GM of the year award should have gone to Billy Guerin. And I don't know why there's not more talk of this, like of what Guerin did in Minnesota. Minnesota loses in game 7 to Vegas. They pushed Vegas as far as they could. They're one of the top teams in the league out of kind of nowhere in a way. I don't know. It just didn't seem like
I would have given it to Zito if I was voting, just because no one did more than he did.
Right.
He really turned over his roster. He and really quickly he changed the culture. He got Spencer Knight signed, even though he has a $10 million goalie sitting there. The team was highly competitive. Minnesota, I agree with you. Bill Guerin did a great job. I would have had him in my mix.
No, Kev, I said I would have voted for Julian Breezeball, but the other GMs weren't going to do that. But you can make an argument for him.
Sure. Yeah, there's a lot of guys that did a lot of good jobs. That's a hard one.
It's a hard one. And like I said, GM, I said this yesterday, GM is really not a year-to-year thing as much as it is like a 5-year to 5-year thing. So
it's supposed to be that year. It's supposed to be, right. And you are allowed to. The first year it came out, I actually voted on the panel. Then we decided as a writers group that, because only a few of us were being invited, that we wouldn't do it.
Right.
So the second year I asked off of it, and then everyone decided to do that. So,
well, and I mean, I sort of quibbled with Lamoriello being nominated for. He won last year, and I think deservedly so. But this year, I thought the only consequential move that they made was the Palmieri trade, and he, I thought it was he opened himself up for a lot of criticism with the Devin Taves trade. So I think that was a 1+, 1-. But
right.
What I'm trying to find out is, did they vote on this after the second round of the playoffs, or was this after the regular season? Because if it's after the regular season, Mark Bergevin should not be nominated for one of the three.
Yeah, it isn't after regular season. It carries into the playoffs.
It's after the second round of the playoffs. I asked about it, and I mean, I think it seems when I ask around, it seems to be that Zito might actually win this thing. And I was looking around to see if there was any. In the 10 years, it started off in 2010, so there have been 10 winners of this.
A first-year GM?
I don't think there's ever been a first-year GM win it. And then when I went through the list,
Bobby Francis, I thought.
No.
Bobby Francis with GM. Sorry, not coach.
First-year GM win this award. I couldn't find any. I mean, I couldn't. Sorry. Jeez. I couldn't find the nominees either.
I
was trying to see if that first-year nominee if there was any first-year nominees. I was trying to find that, but looking at the list of winners, it really looks like they're all guys that have been there. They were all really like big.
Yeah, I can't think of a first-year GM. No, that's true.
It's this award. To be honest, is
well, I'll give one
odd in a setup.
First, okay, he was a GM previous to win the award with a different team, but first year GM who won was George McPhee with Vegas.
Okay. Right. He being a GM previously, like he wasn't a rookie GM. Like a rookie GM to me is, like a rookie GM in the NHL is a rookie GM. Right?
First year GM with that team.
With that team, yeah. He wins with Vegas, and then obviously deservedly so.
Yeah.
But all right, so let's move on. That's just, I mean, I don't know who's going to win it. Actually, I think that if it's after the second round of the series,
Let's bring up something that Russ and I discussed, or actually Russ brought it up.
Not malls.
What's that?
Not malls.
No, not malls. not the malls.
You heard about the mall discussion?
Yes.
Discussion, unfortunately.
Wow.
But no, Russ was curious regarding a certain player signing his second contract. Russ.
You're gonna have to
in Minnesota.
Just say it.
Oh.
Kaprizov after.
Kaprizov. Yeah. Okay. So he burnt his first year of his contract when they signed him. So now his contract is up. He's still an RFA, and so Minnesota has to give him a contract. And he's not an ordinary RFA signing, and he's already kind of hinted to management he would like them to upgrade at the center position, which again is the hardest thing to do in the NHL. And just my feeling is they're going to get one swing at this, to give him a long-term deal to his liking. Otherwise, it turns into Artemi Panarin. And so this is really going to be the big test for Guerin, I think.
It will be.
Now, he's not an arbitration-eligible RFA. He's a pure RFA, which means they'll offer him the qualifying offer, and I believe that protects them against the offer sheet. But here's an offer sheet. I mean, this is a guy that I think teams would definitely offer sheet if they had the opportunity to. Because he's an impact player, You know,
Yeah. I mean, he came up a little small in the playoffs. I'm not saying anything that, that's a big deal, but he did. I mean, he scored one goal in the playoffs, I think, in that whole playoff series against Vegas. He was he's a very exciting player. There's no question about it. He's got all the skills.
And he makes players better.
He is a Panarin, very Panarin, in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
I do agree that there's a lot of similarities, but and I think he'll get a good contract. And they have I guess they have Parise and Suter coming off pretty soon, right?
2 goals, 1 assist. No. Both Suter and Parise have, I think, 3 years left.
There's still 3 years left.
Yeah, but what's funny about that? All the talk is on Parise. Nobody says anything about Suter.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
Well, because he still plays 20-something minutes a game. That's why.
Yeah, no, it's like that contract has not been a bad contract.
No.
Yeah, no, Parise is definitely been the one, and the fact that he wasn't playing in the playoffs early, in the whole playoffs, he played the last 2 games, right? He played the last 2 games of that series.
Yeah, now he had Kaprizov had 2 goals in 7 games, but here, expansion wise, here's another dilemma, and maybe it won't be a dilemma because, like Kevin said, players get traded before the expansion draft. Minnesota's got 4 defensemen, I believe, that they probably want to protect. 3 of them have no move clauses. In Spurgeon, Brodin, and Suter. So the only way that they can protect from Matt Dumba being the guy that gets
they're trading him.
They're probably I would assume that they're trading him before.
Yeah,
he's like a 2-year trade rumor, isn't he?
Yes.
He's a 3, maybe 3. Yeah, I think.
Him and Ristolainen are in the trade rumor Hall of Fame, right?
Yeah.
Not yet. They'll get there. I mean, they've got a lot. They got to knock off some pretty big guys like Thomas Caberlet.
There you go.
Thomas Caberlet is in the trade.
He's in there. Oh, he's in there. There's no question about it. He's in there with Kovalchuk.
He was the first ballot.
Yeah, he was right away. Kovalchuk was in there for sure.
Oh, Kovalchuk.
LeCavier. There's certain guys that have definitely spent a lot of time in there.
Jeff Skinner in Carolina.
Oh yeah. This year, actually, a couple times. You actually get into the Hall of Fame when you do it on more than one team. That's really the big thing when you manage to be a trade rumor guy for more than one team. Yeah,
Skinner's still playing. He's not in yet, so.
Right. When you're still playing it, it's a little tough. It's just tricky. All right, so let's jump to Montreal then in Vegas tonight. Ducharme is coaching. He's coaching.
He's playing.
They're in trouble.
He's play. Oh, he's decided to pull everyone else out. He's going to play. Has there been any word on Romanov? Has anyone heard anything about Romanov playing or not?
I have not heard anything.
And Chandler Stevenson is coaching.
Yeah, he did not. Chandler Stevenson did not travel to Montreal. So we talked about this yesterday, Kevin. What's your opinion on this? It is fascinating. Something that everyone seemed to have missed until Chandler Stevenson goes down is how thin this team is at center. This team is crazy thin at center.
Yeah, no, that's true. But this series has really been kind of remarkable in the sense that just the impression is that Vegas has got it all over Montreal, and then when I watch that series, I'm thinking, Montreal, it's just as good as them. Why can't they win this series?
Yeah.
And when you see them together, it feels different. Like when Vegas was playing Colorado, Vegas seemed a lot better than they seem against Montreal.
That's true.
Why is that? I'm wondering that too.
I think it's because of their toughness on defense, and now because their toughness at center, winning faceoffs. All of a sudden, Vegas can't win a faceoff. The one thing, and then I'll let you finish, Kev. Sorry, the Alex Tuch thing. I went back and looked at it because I had never physically seen him play center. He played center in the USHL in 2014. So literally, probably what they're going to do is, Kev, is what Kevin Hayes used to do early in his career until he got good at it, is to just try and tie up the guy facing off and let somebody else get the puck.
Right.
I mean, they're getting owned.
Center's really an interesting position. Paul Correa told me one time we were talking because I had asked him why he was never a center. He was always a wing, and Correa always looked like a center to me. You should be playing center. And he goes, well, he said, let's be honest. He said, in the modern NHL, the center only determines who you cover on the defensive side of the puck.
Right.
It doesn't have anything to do with offense. He said, and you go where you want, you do what you're going to do. It's who you got coming back is all the center means. So if I was Vegas, that's the way I would look at all that. I'd have everybody just say, okay, so you sort of play with, I mean, if Tuck's going to play center, maybe he's not the guy that goes deep. Maybe it's somebody else on the line, So.
Right. I mean, that is the big thing. I mean, the wings have the point. The wings have the defenseman on the point. That's their responsibility. Right. And the centers, responsibility is to roam more in the middle and try to keep the slot and go back and get the puck, help the defense out. So you don't have a 3-on-2 situation in the offensive zones. That's how it goes. And I totally think that this is it is like when we talked about yesterday when they moved Paul Stastny out of there. I thought, oh, no big deal. But then at the end of the day, it does become a big deal. Because of situations like this. I mean, and Chandler Stevenson, I mean, you're not talking about a guy that's a number one center on many other teams in the NHL. You're talking about,
yeah, that's for sure.
I mean, what is he, a 2 or a second or third line center in a lot of teams in the NHL?
Probably.
So here you are. I mean, if they lose tonight, and Stevenson, you got to assume that he's not playing the next 2 games if he didn't travel to Montreal. I can't imagine.
Well, he could travel the next day. I mean, if he's ready.
Yeah, but I agree with that. Then normally, if you're not going, they're not thinking you're going to play.
Yeah. So if that's the case, Montreal's got a huge opportunity here. I mean, this is, to me, the big thing for tonight is, can the Vegas forwards score a goal like that? Like I said the other night, having the only goals come from your defense. He's had a great game, obviously. God, that's the kind of game that makes it worth all the money that you paid him, Pietrangelo. But your forwards have to score, and their forwards looked frustrated against Price, and they were looking towards the sky, and they were doing all the stuff that they've done before, that we've seen them do before against guys like Talbot in the first round last year against against Dallas. So yeah.
Well, Kevin, let me ask you this, because the statistic right now is that Montreal is 9-1 when they score the first goal and 0-4 when they allow the first goal. That would lead me to believe, and I think that psychologically, you look at how Vegas was after Montreal scored the first goal in Game 2, that I think they were almost psyched out in a sense, and Montreal was infused with confidence. If I'm Peter DeBoer, I'm telling my team, go balls out in the first 5 minutes, just do everything you possibly can to get that first goal, because what the result is going to be if Montreal scores the first one.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Montreal is a momentum team. We've seen this team several times in the last several years. It's St. Louis was a momentum team. They started their momentum early, but we didn't. It's funny about St. Louis won the Cup in the following fall. We weren't talking about St. Louis repeating. You know what I mean? They weren't one of them. Right.
It's true. It's true.
And I think that's the way Montreal is. Like, Montreal's playing well right now. I don't think they're a great team with a great roster, but they're playing very, very well. That's all you need. You need to play well. And with Vegas having issues with the injuries and such, Montreal has a chance. But I've been real impressed by Montreal and the way they've played, because they've done a really good job, and I think they have a lot of confidence. I'd rather be confident than skilled.
Right. Yeah. Oh, in the playoffs, no question about it. Right. I mean, we've seen that so many times. By the way, Mike, your 9-1 thing and the 0-4 thing. I had a discussion with my wife, Kevin, about our discussion previously about math. Okay. I said, Kevin called you out today on the podcast because, you don't like these stats, but yet you like math. To which she responded, well, tell Kevin this. Probability is not what you guys think it is when you guys talk about sports. She said, if you flip a coin, if you flip a coin and someone says the probability is if you flip a coin 100 times, it'll come up 50 times head and 50 times tails, right? That's what everyone says. That's the probability. She said, and that's completely wrong.
It is wrong, yeah.
That's not the probability.
Every flip.
Probability has to do with every single flip, which is why she doesn't like these. Which is why she doesn't like these statistics. You're not talking about probability.
I understand all that, but there is a second level to probability that well, I mean, she knows a lot more about it than I do, but I remember from the one probability class that I had in college that that you're absolutely right. Every time you flip a coin, it's still 50-50.
Right.
But there is also the probability of what happens between the flips of connecting the flips of the coins is a different set of probabilities.
That's more of I think that's more of a possibility or chances type thing, but it absolutely has nothing to do with the next flip, and that's why she doesn't like those statistics in hockey. And it's the first time she explained it to me, so I'm glad I had this discussion. It's the first time she explained to me, so I understood as to why. She's like, just because this team has won 9 times when they've scored first doesn't mean they're going out of 10. Doesn't mean they're going to win the next time.
No, it doesn't. But what that doesn't take into account is that there are other factors that influence the flip of the coin. Like,
right.
Like you're talking about a flip of the coin, which, it is where everything is always the same, but
it's always 50-50, right?
Hockey.
Right. That's true. And that okay, good. I can go back with that. I want to keep this debate going.
Yeah. When you flip a coin, that's always going to be the same. It's always going to be 50%. But when you're playing a hockey game, there are factors that influence that influence what we are considering the flip of the coin, which is scoring the winning goal, like the confidence of the team, the fact that the team that doesn't win the flip is going to be demoralized, and so therefore they're not going to play as hard. The crowd may get fired up as well. So those influence all those.
I like that, and I think that's true. And I think in hockey, especially, a 9-1 when you're scoring the first goal just makes you confident when you score the first goal, and it makes you more confident, and it also gives you the gives you the drive to get that first goal, because you know that there's a little bit of superstition.
Yeah, but look, Colorado scored the first goal 2 or 3 times, and they're watching at home. So
yeah, and and it's very true, and Tampa's won every game on the road except for one. But that one game they lost on the road was Game 5 when they had a chance to put away Florida, right? So there's just don't know.
Yeah, I mean, here's a good example of it. Right now in baseball, unless they won last night, the Diamondbacks have a huge.
No, they didn't win.
They didn't win. So they have a huge losing streak. Huge losing streak.
35 games, something like that.
Yeah, and you could say that they're a flip of the coin to win tomorrow. That's not exactly true because there's talent variations, but the weight of this losing streak makes it difficult for them to come out and have a 50-50 chance of winning tomorrow.
True.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's the same is true. Like when you have one of those things where you don't think there's any bearing on the Maple Leafs players that they can't get out of the first round. Of course there is.
Yeah.
It weighs on you.
And even if those guys weren't there for those other instances.
So my point would be, so that statistic that they haven't gotten out of the first round since 2004. What is it? Yeah. That is significant.
So Kevin, what you're suggesting is the Leafs should be a team of robots, because if they had robots, they could get out of the first round.
No, I don't think I'm suggesting that at all.
I like to look at it this way. No one in the public school system in Toronto has ever seen the Maple Leafs win a playoff series.
Danger, Will Robinson. Danger.
That's the way I like to look at it. I want to talk real quickly about one thing too. And because the Montreal series is, I think we've said a lot about what we can say about that. And we're going to have, plenty more to say on Monday.
You don't want me to use my horseshoe reference again.
No, and this is indeed Friday. I just want everybody to know that this is indeed Friday. So the Florida, but in the players pool that just came out, one of the interesting things that I saw in that pool that really struck me was the vote for most complete NHL player, which was a tie, which was interesting.
Bergeron and who?
Bergeron and Crosby tied top for the most complete player. And first of all, the respect that Crosby gets throughout the league is really interesting there. That's something that I really think that people have to remember, because I think among fan bases, Crosby doesn't have quite always the same.
Yeah, I agree with you. You're right on that. And I've never understood that. I don't understand why he's not universally loved in Canada.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I have no understanding of that.
Yeah, it's baffling. I mean, especially, I thought the golden goal would be it, Kevin. I mean, if he scores that golden goal, he should go up with Henderson and Canadian War.
That is, but he always tries to say the right thing.
Oh, yeah.
He works.
Yeah, he represents the league and himself great.
Yeah, he works real hard. He's still, there's no sign of deterioration. I mean, he's not exactly as dynamic as he was 10 years ago, but I mean, he still can play.
I think there's sort of like a boring quality to Crosby that, for example, okay, he scores the golden goal. He doesn't get a big ton of endorsements. The most important endorsement, or the most visible one, was he started doing Tim Hortons commercials, and they had to include Nathan McKinnon in the advertising campaign because Crosby wasn't exciting enough. They had to have the other guy from what was it, Nova Scotia, where he's from. Yeah, I mean, so
Nova Scotia.
Is there anything to this theory? And I'm just throwing this out there. I'm just spitballing. I think Kevin and I, we may have talked about this at one point somewhere down the line, and there are many great discussions at an NHL Stanley Cup final. But is there anything to this that Crosby? We know nothing about Crosby's private life, but he is incredibly private. I mean, he goes well beyond, I think, to keep his off ice stuff off the ice.
Yeah, there might be something to that. Yeah, I mean, you go back to when Wayne Gretzky started dating Janet Jones, that was like major news. And
Gretzky's dad was always around, and we had the whole feeling
there was a lot to him.
Well, I mean, it's funny because Crosby had his 1,000th game during this past season, and they did a video presentation, and I believe he was on the ice with his girlfriend. And that was, I think, the first time that people have seen his girlfriend.
People I didn't even know. I mean, if you ask most people around the league, is Sidney Crosby married? Most fans around the league, I bet you maybe not. What percentage?
No, that's true.
What?
No, it's true. And
who would know? Who would know?
And and he's not I know him pretty well. I've done a lot of interviews with him. I've done a lot of one-on-one interviews. I started interviewing him when he was 17. He's going to always be one of my all-time favorite players. He's fun to talk to. He's interesting, but he doesn't volunteer about his off time. The closest he ever came, which to me was just hilarious, is that he's amused that when he goes to a restaurant, that what he orders is on Twitter before it arrives at his. And he is on Twitter, but he uses a handle, and he won't tell anybody that.
I have talked to Claude Giroux about him. I've talked to Claude Giroux and him are very close, which is really ironic because people think of them as like arch enemies. They are great. They are very close. Like Giroux considers him one of his better players in the league, one of his better friends in the league, and Giroux says he's just a great guy who just absolutely just lives, breathes hockey. Like that's what he does.
Well, he is a great guy. I mean, he just absolutely is. He's polite and cordial. He's a good teammate. He's considerate of others. Everything about him. But going back to that all around, what I really liked about that is you could see that the players put some effort in this. Yeah. And the time makes sense to me because I think Crosby is a little better than Bergeron offensively, and I think Bergeron's a little better than him defensively.
Yeah, right.
Because I think Crosby is a very good and undervalued defensive player.
Oh, he is.
And Bergeron is undervalued as an offensive player.
And it was a statistical tie, 23.78%.
That is crazy. Like, think about that. That is really. I mean that, and you're right though. Bergeron has such. These are two guys that just have such respect playing, and when people play against them. But I also like the fact that that the next guy on this list was Alexander Barkov, which really was something that I think that in this year, we really saw like Barkov's coming out party to the world. I mean, Barkov's been a great player.
A couple of years ago, I think he had that.
Yeah,
I think this year he just.
I don't think it was this season.
He hasn't been on these kind of lists before. Like you haven't seen him.
No, he's pretty well respected.
Yeah,
he's respected. There's no question about it. I'm not saying that. He's
a perennial Selke nominee now.
Yeah,
3 or 4 years.
He's had that.
I'm going to tell you which list sucked though. The best shot. Alex Ovechkin, sure. You want to put him as the best shot, that's fine. The fact that Pasternak is behind McKinnon and Line and Matthews, sorry. If you ever listen to David Pasternak's shot, like if you're at the game and you listen to the way that shot, Ek and I listened to it in an empty arena, and it's unbelievable what it sounds like.
I will say this and admit beforehand that I'm doing it with a hint of sarcasm, but the vote of if you need to win one game, who is the one player at any position you would want on your team? And Connor McDavid wins it when Connor McDavid lost all 4 games in the playoffs.
It's a team game, though, Mike.
Yeah,
I'm
I'm not buying you that. He's just so dynamic, like that.
Great. I'm not saying he's not great. He is, but it's
but that there's logic to that vote because what they're saying is because first of all, we don't know what team he's going to play on. We're just saying you had to have one guy. Well, it's hard to think of a guy that's more dynamic or can do more.
True.
So I see that. Here's the one I think is interesting.
Okay.
The goalie vote.
Okay.
Because Vasilevsky was number 1, which right should be. Wasn't Fleury number 2, as I recall?
Yes.
Yeah.
But okay. Here's my theory on that. Like there are a lot of great goalies. I'm not saying that Fleury, his performance level is deserving of being there to be sure. But you could have taken other people. But I think 2 things weighed on players because they're I think subconsciously this came in. He was treated poorly by Vegas and the whole league knows it last summer.
Yeah.
And number 2, he might be known as the greatest teammate in the game today. Everybody knows it. It's right around. People, when they meet Fleury, instantly like him. And I think there's some popularity there that goes into that. Now, I don't want to take anything away how he's playing because, I think he plays great. But I think that weighed into because they could have taken other guys too. There was
but the drop off from first to second is massive.
Yeah, and it should be. Don't you think it should be?
Yeah. No, listen, I think Tampa had guts when they took Vasilevsky. Everybody knew he could be really great, but somebody had to take him. They did.
Yeah.
I mean, I still think if for me, I'm not convinced. I mean, first of all, if I had one guy to win one game with, it might be Marc-Andre Fleury. To be honest, like if I need a game won by a single guy, I think Fleury might be able to win you a game.
I'm not going Fleury.
If I'm asked that question, 99 out of 100 times I'm going to say goalie to the answer to that question.
I don't know about that act, but honestly, I think if it's one player, I would choose a goalie.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I would take Vasilevsky over Fleury.
I agree.
Yeah, I would too, but I don't think I'd take a goalie because oftentimes, if I'm assuming that if you're doing one game like that, you're playing against another great team as well. Then it just comes down to which goalie is hotter.
Yeah.
At that time. So I think I'd do a forward.
And this is where I bring up Mike Rupp because he never would have been on any of these lists. So,
to me, and I think Fleury, I mean, what if Vegas wins this series with Montreal, if they do, I think it's going to be very important to go back to the first 10 minutes of game 1 as to a big reason why they won this series. Because honestly, there were moments in that first 10 minutes that Fleury made some saves that were just ridiculous. That if Montreal keeps their confidence going and gets the lead there, I don't know that Vegas wins the series. I think that to me was the absolute telling thing. And it is interesting now that we're also not hearing any talk of Leonard for game 3, right? We're not like that's
no talk of that.
So I think it's safe to say that the 4 goalies are kind of locked in now. And
I just think Vegas has to win their next face-off. I can't even think for them. They can't even think about like anything else.
Would you, Kevin? Would you go? Yeah, yesterday I also brought up that question. Would you go with the idea that we are looking at the 2 starting goalies for Canada, the 2 top goalies for Canada in the next Olympics in one series, and the 2 top goalies for the Russians in the other series?
Yeah. I could go with that. We're going to have to see obviously how they're playing next fall because you're kind of splitting hairs. With the talented goalies, but I don't. There's nothing. I think you'd feel pretty good about it if those are 2 goalies.
Yeah, I mean, I think that. I mean, and I think Fleury if Fleury at 40 is the Olympic goalie, or that'd be a heck of a story too.
It's funny. It's funny how the dynamic has changed because I think before, like during the season, I think it was probably Binnington, Blackwood, and maybe Price, but even though Price was not having a good year, but based on that, they always like to bring a veteran guy. But now I think it's Fleury, Price, and Binnington. I think that's
but if you're talking about a 40-year-old goalie winning for you in the Olympics on international ice, that's not a great formula.
Bet we're playing on North American ice.
Yeah.
Are they playing on North American?
Yeah, that's
okay.
they built North American ice in China.
Okay, I wasn't sure if they did. Okay,
But again,
that gives it a better chance then.
again, and I know that we don't know if they're playing.
Yeah, I don't know if they're playing
Yeah.
either. I mean, that's...
They're playing.
You think so?
Yeah.
I mean, it could fall apart, but there's just too much at stake here. Like they really do. The IOC does want, and China wants. They want star power, and it's hard to find that in the Winter Olympics unless you bring over some big name athletes. So
Right.
Yeah.
That's
yeah,
true.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. That's all we got. Thanks, guys. Thanks so much for a great week, everyone, and enjoy the weekend. We'll have a lot to talk about. Geez, we'll know a lot by the time we get here on Monday. Remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. We will talk to you then.